Hi, I'm Paul Brodie. Mitch behind the cameras, thanks for joining us. I'm still not walking perfectly, but I am getting better. So I can't move around a whole lot. We're going to do a brazing video because I can sit at the park stand and I can braze and I can explain things. So we're going to do sort of a recap. That's what I think, because every so often we get a few questions, what's the difference between silver solder, nickel silver brazing, things like that. So I'll go over that and show you the fluxes and different things. It's basically a recap. That's what I'm going to call it. So I'm going to do some examples. And the first is silver solder. This is how silver solder comes. It's a Wolverine brand, and it's A56T. So 56, that stands for the percentage of silver. And 56 seems to work fine. I think there's also 49%, but 56 works fine. So that's the silver solder. Silver solder comes in a coil. Then we go on to nickel silver, and it's a long rod, and it looks a lot the same, but nickel silver doesn't come in a coil. It comes in a straight. And what I've noticed about nickel silver is that if I take a rag, it always seems to have this kind of an oily film on it. So I always wipe the rod down, and I guess if you want to use a bit of lacquer thinner or acetone or whatever to get it all off, but I find using a rag, that works fine. And then there's the bare bronze rod. They come in different sizes, but what I prefer is the 3/32. It's good for fillet brazing and things like that. So where you would use this kind of selection, this is for the light duty stuff, like on a bicycle frame, a water bottle braze on, or a cable stop, and that's what I'm going to do. So it doesn't have a whole lot of force on them, and nickel silver goes on really fast because it's a low temperature melting point. And then for the nickel silver, you would use it to hold on a brake mount, something like that, a pinch lug. So I'm going to give you, I've got an example here. I took a tube and I tig-tacked on an 1/8 inch piece here. And so you could think of this as a seat stay on a bicycle, and this is the brake mount. And what I want to do is to flow the nickel silver around it. You're going to watch it wick and flow, and hopefully just put a very small bead on there. And then I set up this, and I'm going to fillet braze. I'm going to fillet braze up here and see how that works out, because a lot of the fillet brazing I've done in the past is this kind of thing where I'm standing up and I'm going around a tube. That's going to be a little hard for me today. So I found this upstairs. It's a bilaminate construction that talks about when you put one tube over another tube on one side, and then that's nickel silver there. See that around there? And then this is brazing. If you look at the color, you can see the difference. See, this is more yellowy, and this is a lighter color. Nickel silver, bronze braze. So on the bilaminate, it's kind of like a lug, but the lug is only on one side. I think this started in France in the 1940s, 1950s, not sure about that. Correct me if I'm wrong. So we're gonna also, this is the flux for the gas fluxer. I have a gas fluxer down on the floor, and it puts flux into the acetylene frame. This is a liquid flux. It's really stinky stuff. This is the flux for when you're brazing, fillet brazing, and this is the flux for silver soldering. So I'm going to show you this. I got two different brushes. I go to the art store, and it's a bristle 500p. I don't know if that means anything. So I got two brushes. You see this one here, SS, silver solder. So this is for this flux. This is for this flux, and I have that on there so I don't mix up the brushes because the fluxes are different. So there you go. That's a little bit of the basics. Going to light the torch up. I'll show you how I clean the tip. And we'll do a little bit of work here. Thanks for tuning in. Okay, I like a nice cone, a sharp cone. So I do a couple things. I've got a tip cleaner here, and it's a little smaller than the nozzle. So I don't use it like a file. I just put it down there to make sure that it's clean. And then I take a file and I file off the top until I can see the copper there. And that's basically how I prep the tip of the torch. It's a Victor torch, a J28. I like it because the knobs are up high and they don't interfere. I put on a hook here. We made a video years ago, and I made the hook so that goes into what I got here is it's a mic stand. You can buy them pretty cheaply. So if you're not using the torch, it just hangs like that. So that works really well. And I've got a striker here. So we'll do that. So first thing to do is to do the braze-ons here. So I've got a vise, and I'm gonna hang it off the side here. Like that. We'll get the bottom bracket level. There we go. So I'm gonna flux it up. And then these are the braze-ons, and they go into the hole. It's a 1/4-inch hole, like that. They get the flux on them. And then my fixture is this. It's made out of an old coping saw. That little stud that comes down, a couple weights here. So this acts as a heat sink. And can you see how the braze-on can go back and forth? If you don't have something to hold it level, you'll have your water bottle bosses at different angles. So this is what holds it. I've got my silver solder here. What really helps on silver solder, and I don't do this on the nickel silver or the brazing rods, I do a little sanding, and there's some kind of a coating it gets on the outside, oxidation. And if you sand off the surface just a little bit, it really helps the silver solder to flow. And on a water bottle braze-on, you don't want to get the flux into the thread because it's hard to get out. So you have to be careful. So first thing is to put some flux like that. I try not to get this on my hands. And then I go around very carefully, just like that. Don't get any flux down the hole. I use a very small flame, and the cone of the flame gets very, very close. That's part of the secret of doing silver soldering, especially on bicycle frames. You want very small flame and very, very close, and then you work fast. So there, that's all fluxed up. What I do is I start on one side and I put on a little bit of a blob. Then I go to the other end and I put on a blob there, and then I melt it. Just like that. I have gloves, but I'm very used to not wearing gloves and being careful, so I am conscious of safety. with the automatic fluxer, you have to let things settle down a little bit. You can do this without a fluxer, but a fluxer is so much nicer. So I'm looking at the flame, and I want a very, very small flame. Okay, that's a very small cone there. I shouldn't have to do any sort of a preheat. Okay, let's try that. So I got the flame, I got the cone on the boss. Okay. I'm going to bring this around. There, see how fast it melts? So what I'll do now is to flow it along and maybe add a little bit. There we go. So what I'm looking for now is a heat stain. If you take a long time and you get too much heat in it, you'll see a heat stain come down here. But I'm not seeing any heat stains, so I think I've done okay. We'll do this one now. Same thing. So I got a very small cone, right? It's very, very small. And I'm aiming it right at the bottle boss. Here we go. See, that didn't take any time at all, really. I can actually rest the torch right on the tube. There we go. Yeah, just like that, it's done. And okay, see here, I've got a little start of a heat stain. Can you see how there's a little bit of a straw color there? Maybe a little bit of blue touch, but so basically I haven't affected the tube by excess heat. So can you see here how the cone is not nice? And there's a bit of carbon right at the base of the cone. I don't know if you can see that. So what I do is I take a file and I just knock it off a little bit like that. I really got to, there we go. So that's what I do to fix it when then I don't have to switch off the flame or anything like that. So once again, I've got a very small cone. So when I'm nickel silvering, it all depends on the thickness of the material. I do have a larger cone, and then when I'm using a big brazing rod at 3/32, I have a larger cone. And so the tip that I'm using here is a number 0. I have a number 1 if I want more heat. And Mitch is going to show you how much oxy-acetylene pressure I'm using. Not much, just a little bit up. There's a rule of thumb that says, you know, if you got a number 3 tip, you use 3 pounds both. Number 5 tip, you use 5. But I don't use that much. As long as there's a little bit of pressure in the gauges, that's what I want. I'm happy with that. So I've got the Got the cable stop. It's balanced there, kind of. And I'm going to do one end and then the other end, and then I'll flow it down. So that worked out fine. It's also, you can use the side of the torch as a flashlight in a sense, because it's works really well like that. All right, we got a larger flame now, more heat, nickel silver rod, and hopefully you can watch it wick, because if it gets, it's going to get hotter, it's going to get red. On the silver solder, it's so low heat compared to nickel silver that it never gets, if it gets red, you usually burn the flux. So that's why you have different kinds of fluxes. So I'm going to give it a little bit of a preheat. And then we will nickel silver. So you can think of this as a brake boss going onto a seat stay here. This tube is the seat stay. All right, looks like it's getting up to temperature. So you want the cone to be a little bit away, not as close as silver soldering, that's for sure. And it looks like it's, there we go. Okay, see, I've got it. Can you see that? It's flowed a little bit, so. So I'm heating it up here. You should be able to see, can you see it wicking a little bit? And then I can add a bit. I just want a little fillet in there, not big. So I'm putting most of the heat on onto the plate because the tube heats up a lot faster. There you go, it's wicking. I go back a little bit so I can even it out. So I can see it wicking from where I am. And then I add a little bit. So the cone's maybe 1/4 inch away, something like that. And you can experiment to find out what works for you. If the nickel silver is running down the tube, you got too much heat. And it seems to be working quite nicely. I got the heat on the plate because it's taking more heat. You have to, as you're nickel silvering or you're brazing, if you watch and if you're aware, it'll tell you what it needs, what it wants. If it's running down, you know you got too much heat. If you've got the torch on it and nothing's happening fast, then you don't have enough heat. So you gotta watch and be aware of what's going on. I learned how to braze in high school. I was 12 years old. So I've been brazing for almost 60 years. I never get tired of it. It's a pretty cool process. It's all about control. We are moving on to the brazing section now. I got my 330 seconds bare bronze rod. I got my Victor torch with the 0 tip. Automatic fluxer is helping here. That's why the flame is green. That's the flux. The flux is coming right through. So I got the paste flux on the part that I want to braze, and also as I'm brazing, the fluxer is adding flux. That's the beauty of the automatic fluxer. So I'm going to increase the cone, make the cone a little hotter here, and we'll see if it's a good temperature. Okay, I got a neutral flame. It's not oxidizing, it's not carburizing. Let's see what we can do here. In high school, I used to have a bunch of motorcycle projects, and I'd help friends out, and I used to make mufflers for trials bikes and things like that back in grade 8 and 9. All of the regular projects in metalwork class that all the other students were doing, apparently I didn't have to do that because the teacher saw that I was so keen. He just let me do whatever I wanted because I was always busy. I'd show up at his door even before he got to class. So I was there. I think class started at 8:30 or something there. I'd be there at 8:10 waiting for him. He'd open the door and I'd go and work for 10, 15 minutes. Then I'd go to homeroom. That was my life back in high school. I got caught skipping out of French class, and the teacher says, "Where were you?" And I said, "I was in the metal workshop." And he said, "Don't do that again." Okay. I got busted. So on brazing, it's kind of like heating and cooling, and the size of the fillet, it determines the strength. So you see how I put the cone right onto the rod, and then I take it away, and that allows it to cool. Never actually brazed something like this for a very long time, so we'll just see what happens. Anyway, I think you'll get the idea. So do you see how I melt the rod and then I pull away the cone? Heating and cooling over and over. I got a BSA 250 that I'm in the process of restoring, and the headlight mounts on the forks are hand brazed at the factory. They would never do that these days, never. But back in it's a 67 model, back then, that's what they did. I guess labor was inexpensive, and that's what they did. There we go. There's a fillet braze. and it's okay. Okay, what I thought I'd show you, in class, I haven't done this for 6 years, I used to get the students to build an icicle. And it's just the brazing rod and you build it up and up. So I thought I'd try my hand. This torch is way too hot right now, so I'm gonna back it off and we'll give it a little go and just see what happens. It's been 6 years at least since I've done this, so I have no idea if I'm still in practice, but you'll get the idea. And if it really helps to have an automatic fluxer, I know that because I tried it without once just to see what happens, and it was tough. The fluxer really helps. So when you're building an icicle, it really is about heating and cooling. If you don't get it right, it doesn't work. So you see how I get the cone right on the rod, and then I'm off. This is a very good exercise if you want to enhance your brazing capabilities. Hand-eye coordination and timing and getting the flame right. So heating and cooling. As soon as I melt the bronze, I'm out of there. I hope you can see that. Okay, I think you get the idea. Could go on and on, but oh, it's leaning. Okay, well, so be it. Well, that's our video for today. I hope you enjoyed it. Hope you learned something about brazing and silver soldering and nickel silvering. Mitch and I, we really like coffee. It really helps our channel a lot if you buy us some coffees. Thank you very much. See you next week.